It's a privilege from God to us that we can be with you in your homes, in the bar, on the beach, wherever. We thank God that you've been with us week after week, and we are blessed to have you. And we want you to know that God loves you. And if you're not living for Jesus, this is the time that you need to turn over to Him. We welcome you, and we pray that you will stay tuned with us. God bless you.
A critical part of parenting is training, and another is teaching, training and teaching. And no other nation recognizes this more than the Jewish people. They recognize this to the extent that in the central texts of Judaism, the Talmud, it is said that as long as the children remain in school, their enemies will not prevail. And they were not talking about, science and social studies and so on. While these subjects, they're important, biblical education really was what they were speaking about, how they could be trained and taught from the Bible. So here is where values are imparted, like hard work, honesty, justice, mercy. And so this was the kind of orientation our children had. And so Deuteronomy, supported this kind of teaching and the importance with which it must be delivered, to the extent that it was said that when we, instill these commandments in our children, we must do it how? Diligently, deliberately. And it is recorded, in the Pentateuch, in Deuteronomy, it says that we must do this teaching and training when we lie down, when we get up, when we walk, when we speak. We must encourage our children to ask questions, and we must have answers. And so this evening we want to continue in this vein, and also to share some personal experiences with you that you could take and help in your parenting of your children. Gentlemen.
The same Jewish community, from the age of 0 to 12, used the home as the central place for teaching. Education was done in the home. Yeah, in the home. And so the text, if they wanted to teach history, social studies, whatever, they used the Torah, used that text to teach. And they would do such a good job that by the age of 12, that child, when introduced to the synagogue, would be competent enough, understanding the laws, understanding the prophets, even understanding some of the wisdom literature, so that he will now be able to make a public appearance. As a matter of fact, he was classified as a man by the time he got to the age of 12 to be able to take up a measure of manly responsibilities. And at that age, he would then become exposed to public mentoring, especially by the elders in the synagogue. I thought it was a powerful example, Pastor Marcel, for what we are actually doing is reminding ourselves of the value and the importance of teaching and training. I want to submit to us that we are either producing life or killing it. In Deuteronomy, Micah 6:8, it says, He has shown you, O man, to do what is required of thee, to do justly, love mercy, walk humbly. And I coined it this way, that Micah is saying that God is saying to us that we must release life, produce life, release life. Or, put it the other way, teach folks how, especially our children, how to do justly, how to love mercy, how to walk humbly. If we really love our children, trust me, we are going to ensure especially those three components, those three ingredients are a part of their lives. to do justly, to love mercy, to walk humbly. You know, I remember as the program was about to start, I remember several years ago as a child in my parents' home. I'm the eldest. Mom and dad made 4. They adopted 4 more. So I had the privilege or the misfortune of leading everyone. And my parents were actively involved in work and ministry. And so lots of times the big brother was left in charge. That's a terrible thing, because when things go right, you get praise. When things don't go right, they beat you as the big brother. You were held accountable. So I remember this day, we had this, we never, in those days, never had the fancy oven, where you know, the gas oven. We had this, it was a mud oven, it was at the bottom of the house, and it was well plastered, and it had this fancy door. When you put the stuff inside, you put on this kind of zinc door, you brace it, and then there were some, what we would call cockles bags, and you would wet the cockles bags, you know, and you would cover over the mouth of the oven so that it would conceal the heat. So my mom loved baking, and she would bake about 2 or 3 times in a week, and we loved bread, and we would eat a lot of bread. And this day, it was my responsibility to take the bread out of the oven. So I went, checked to make sure that the bread was ready to be removed, and it took me about 3 visits before I could be sure that the bread was ready. So I took the bread out of the oven and took it upstairs, took it out of the pan, and in the process of doing so, I found in the pan 25 cents. Now in those days, 25 cents was like the $10 coin, was a round coin and a silver coin, and in those days it was a very significant coin. It was very, because in those days we had $1 notes and those kinds of things. So 25 cents was plenty money. You call it bob, you know. So I took out the 25 cents without making any announcement to anyone. By then it was well baked, it was black. So I went to the yard, got some sand, got some water, and I remember shining the 25 cents. It took a while to get back the 25 cents into a marketable color. And when I was finished, I put it up nicely, and I was waiting until Monday morning to go to school. Monday morning came, and I went to school, and amazingly, my 25 cents was such a powerful coin that I bought snack for almost everybody in my class that day. I spent the 25 cents buying chicken foot and tamarind ball, and it was amazing. And later that Monday evening, my mom came home. I think she was at Bible school at the time, and she came home in the evening and she said, she calls me Junior. Junior, you remember when you took out the bread? Didn't you see 25 cents there? And I said, no, Mom. She said, Junior, come, said, you remember when you took out the bread? You didn't see 25 cents? I said, no, Mom, I can't remember any 25 cents. And so she said, son, I remember when I was putting the bread in. 25 cents fell between the bread, and I allowed it to remain there until you don't remember that you took it. So I said no. She said, all right. The next day she passed around the school to do a survey. To my horror and misery, to find out that I had monies to spend. And then she called me back home the afternoon, just after lunch. She said, son, I am not preparing a thief. You didn't see 25 cents. By then I decided I will come full, you know. I talked straight up. I said, yes, ma'am. So what did you do with the 25 cents? And I decided to give her the history. He said, I'm going to beat you today because you are both a liar and a thief. And I am not producing no liar nor no thief in this house. Every time you see money around this house, know it come from somebody. It is my money or your father's money, and you have no authority to just pick it up. It means that when you go to people's place, you will pick up their stuff. That is what I am producing. And I must confess that she gave me a sound thrashing. Ever since then, when I see people think, I leave it alone. Because I really don't want that kind of experience again.
You know, on the flip side of that, I recall our son Yafet, we trying to get this young man to take care of himself. And he goes to the classroom, he must be well presented. And we talk, and Yafet just don't seem to be getting it. But he went to school and his teacher said to him, you know, you cannot come into my class looking and smelling and dripping like that. Well, that was the end of the matter. Yafet now start powdering, Yafet now start taking care of himself, and he went to school and we had no problem with that. Why am I saying this? Because sometimes as parents, we say things to our children and they really don't pay much attention to us. But somebody on the outside says to them, this is what needs to be done, especially a teacher in a classroom environment. And right away, a guy line up, boom, we have no more problem with Yafet. Now, Yafet is dressing like Mr. Clean.
Repeat them to your children.
Yeah.
Talk about them when they sit in the house, and when they walk along the road, and when they lie down, and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on their hand and let them be a symbol on their forehead. Write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Do it consistently, over and over and over and over again.
You know, the family would always be the bedrock of society. And as such, it is important for teaching to take place at home. I recall as a youngster, you know, I don't know if I believe that I would have been a fireman or an arsonist. But my mom was at work, single parent. My siblings were in their home, and I decided that I was going to start a fire. And I started a fire in the yard. Looking, I knew when my mom came home, she came from a particular direction, so I kept looking in that direction, not in the other direction. And she came, you know. The scripture reminds us that foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, the rod of correction to drive it out. So that fire was going, and I was rejoicing looking at my fire. My mom came in, and she took the fireman or the arsonist inside, and she threw the foolishness out of him with the rod of correction. I never started another fire. You know, what a lesson I learned, you know. So many times we allow our children to do things that they ought not to do. And we sit and we do nothing about it. I thank God for parents who understand that they have a responsibility to point their children in the right direction, so that those children will grow up to be honorable citizens in this nation.
A man's life is not determined, you know, by his beginnings. And you know, many times I heard my father as a child impressing that upon me, and he kept saying that, you know, if you work hard, you could actually become somebody of value to your society and to your family, to your people. And those words kept coming all the time. And so sometimes, you know, you get the feeling that children today believe that everything is just easy. You know, I want a Reebok, I want a Latex, I want iPad, and they're calling things. You know, they're advanced now, so they're calling things. And so every now and again, you know, it's so important that we remind our children that, you know, life is not a cakewalk. And I remember my father saying, if you consistently position yourself, because he liked to talk about education and so on, and the importance and how it will keep you from the vagaries of life. And I can recall, you see, my father was a transport worker, he was a carpenter. And I remember enrolling at the St. Paul College of Education, and had no bag to carry the books. And I remember, transport workers, they wore hard clothing, and so there was this pants that he had that was washed out. So I took part of that pants and I took it to a lady named Miss Can through the alleyway in the scheme yard there, and Miss Can actually sewed a bag and put a strap with this wash out, pants. But the bag, the material was stored here, never mind it was washed out. And so I put my books in there and I trekked to CPC, sometimes walked for 2 years, and graduated. I remember when I got married, we lived in a bedroom, everything happened there. And so I'm not saying that this must happen to you, but I'm saying to you that it is important that you work hard. You can work your way out of your situation. And many times, parents, we must instill this upon our children, because some children believe, look, I can't make it. And so we have to constantly teaching them that, look, never mind your circumstance now. You don't have to be a thief. You don't have to be a bandit. You don't have to be a scamp. You don't have to be, all of those things. If you work hard, this is a value. You can actually come out of your state.
Hard work and consistency is the real key to bring any nation, anybody, any individual out of poverty. You just have to be focused. And in focusing, you're encouraged to set your standards, and better yet, base your standards upon the word of the Lord. You see, what we are experiencing now, we are seeing a lot of difficulties where people believe that they can get rich quick or die trying. Those are popular sayings. We hear things like honesty is the best policy, but dishonesty is the road to prosperity. We hear all this foolishness like no tricks, no living. But you have to instill in your children, put your child down to sit down and teach those values.
Yes.
I can recall a gentleman, maybe he's not known publicly, but I knew of public figures who would go and sit, and they sat with him so that they can benefit from his wisdom. That is not his wisdom coming forward there, but they benefited tremendously from his wisdom. This man that I'm talking about, his name was Patrick Alexander Cook. And he was a villager in the islands of Leguan, well respected. People would go and sit with this man. This man understood finances, and he would help people administer their own finances. And one day I had a little run-in with him, because he sent me to the shop and he asked me, where's the change? And I said, I think it's Babu. I said, oh, the change at Babu. He said, how you mean? I said, oh, me buy biscuit and me eat. He said, what? You spent my change? I said, yeah, me buy biscuit. And this gentleman was so upset. And he taught me, you don't spend what is not yours. And that lived with me, and I would say that is a life-changing experience. There are some of you, you may not be qualified, but you have value, you have morals, you have ethics. You need to teach that to your children, because without that, they will go into society and become immoral.
Growing up in the home, you knew the values that your parents would instill. There were laws. The house had laws. So there are things that you could do and there are things that you couldn't do. And you couldn't forget them because they were right there before you. You were reminded about them if you stepped out of line with a plate cloth coming, or something to keep you in line. And not only your parents instilled those values, but the community knew what your parents stood for. And so as you go out, you always had to be looking back. Remember as a schoolboy going to Smith Church School, they had these posts
in the middle, and you used to jump the post, over the post. And every time my parents would say to me, you are not to do that. Now she made the rules, and you had to follow the rules, but as boys you reach with your friends and you want to break the rules. And then as you break the rules, you had to be looking back to see if the neighbor was passing or a friend of my mom was passing. Because if they caught you, they would instill they would put some lashes on you, then take you to your parents, and your parents would finish it off. So you knew before these values, you know the law, you knew you couldn't come in at a certain time, you know what time you had to reach school, and you know this helped me because when I started to parent, when I became a parent, I measured the distance from school to the gardens where the first child would reach, and then I set my time limit. So when school over at 3 o'clock, I give them up to 3:45 to reach the Roxham Bowden Gardens, because I discovered the first child reached to the gardens at 3:15. So I did that without they knowing, and I said to them at 3:45, you must be home here. So if you came after 3:45, your excuse had to be good, because I didn't accept excuse like that. Many times what is happening, parents are accepting whatever their children say without checking it out. I checked it out to make sure that my children, they knew the time was 3:45, that is when you have to reach home, at 3:45. Sometimes at 3:20, they're coming in with a speed because they knew the rules. I learned that from my parents. They checked on everything, so you couldn't escape like that.
In all fairness, some of the times has changed because now no one lashes my children. You know, things has changed a bit. I mean, I would imagine that I can take a complaint if someone see my child out of line. But society has changed, but it does not change the fact that older folks can bring direction to younger folks.
It takes a village to raise a child. And parents, elders of the community, church leaders, religious leaders, it is the responsibility of all of us to ensure that our children do not go astray.
It's a privilege and a joy for me to always speak about my parents. Came from a home of hard work, in the sense that my mother and my father, they produced 14 children. Wow. That itself is hard work. Yeah. Even though last night I was reflecting on them, and I could still see them in my mind doing things for us. And I was asking myself, where in heaven in that house we used to fit? But my father was a hard worker. You know why? He had 14 mouths plus himself and wife to feed. He was not this big, brilliant man, but he worked diligently. He used to work in Ministry of Public Works and Communication. He used to plant his rice. He used to mind his cow. He used to plant his farm. And so he taught us how to work hard. And I remember when I became of age and I started to work, he said to me, I don't want your money. You can give your mother something and you save the rest. And that principle is in me onto this age. God has blessed me with 3 sons. And I think about them because I don't have a gold spoon. And whatever little I have, I put aside, because this young generation, they wait until they want something tomorrow, and then they come today and they say, Daddy, I got to get X, Y, and Z. But as a father, if you don't prepare for them, we must remember that children are blessings of God. And God has allowed us that we must consider the value that God has placed on them, how we bless them, how we desire for them to worship Him. But as parents, we must be the one doing the teaching, to teach our children, to put them on the road to right and to wrong. And I want to say to us fathers, this is no time for us to neglect our children. They need us. Every day you open the paper, you read the news, you see some murder, some accident, some robbery. Young people are committing these things. And parents, you need to stand up for your children. Don't be a man that hit and run. Stay and look after your children. And you will see this generation will be a better place for us to live in.
You know, I'm happy that you made mention of that, Bush, because as a parent, sometimes your child really don't listen attentively to what you have to say. But that should not stop you from speaking. Because that word that you consistently declare to them, one of these days, it's going to register. And you made mention of children coming to parents when they want something. It happens. Now, if you don't have it, who's going to provide it for them? They leave the house and somebody walks up. That is why it's important that parents, especially men, log on to their Heavenly Father. He is the source. So when He gives the source, you can ensure that you have the resource to give to your children. I've learned that lesson, and I'm thankful to God that it's working.
You know, Deuteronomy is so powerful. Moses was leaving and he made this observation that the children of Israel, the younger generation, was the future. And he made it so clear that they must teach. And you might say, well, I've taught already, keep on teaching. Bind it on their hands, put it on the doorpost. It must always be in their face. You ask me, Pastor, why do we do this? And I want to close by submitting this to you. 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Now there are many parts, yet one body. I want us to recognize that every child is a part of that family. All members of that household is a part of that family. And it is one body. You can't say, well, you know, I have no need of this one or that one. They're all one. So the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. Or, again, the hand can't say to the feet, I don't need you. We all need each other. And because of that need, let us make sure that we invest in such a way that when we are not there, our children will not be taken advantage of by the enemy, by those who don't like them, by taking advantage of their weaknesses and their lack of training to use them for their own personal good. I pray that God will continue to bless us as we continue to romance this whole idea of how do we raise up the next generation to take charge and do a better job than we are doing. God bless you. Happy Republic anniversary to you, Guyana. From Pravul Creek right on to the Essequibo, to Lethem, all over Guyana, we want to celebrate our Republican status. A time where we recognize our sovereignty and our ability as a people to make collective decisions. It is a wonderful experience and a demonstration of God's love and liberty to us as a people. And I encourage us as we celebrate that we will remember that we all need each other. And nothing you and I will be able to achieve without good and proper relationship. So as we celebrate, let us work and do it together. And as I leave this program this afternoon, I would like you to remember that our Republican status celebrates our collective ability to make collective decisions. Let us do so. God bless you.
We thank you for being part of Choices. Remember, you can join us at First Assembly for any of our regular weekly services. I am Celestia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.